Hey, TWB, how's it going? Just getting ready to start here. Just give me a second. I just want to make sure everything is looking good in terms of the audio and the video. And I've been messing with my stream, some of my stream settings, so it was giving me an error. But it looks like things are good now. Welcome, everybody. Just got a little Christmas music going on right now. Just getting the mood here. All right, let's stop this. Let's start this up with, this is, it's a little loud on my end. Classic winter video game music, man. Always liked the ice aesthetics since it is Christmas Eve right now when we're recording it. No schmupping today. I'm doing the podcast thing. I did actually 1cc Blue Revolver finally, so I can move on from that, at least on the normal settings. That was fun. But man, I loved Secret Man in the winter area. That had such good I don't know what's the word for it. Just a mood. The vibes were just fantastic. But that is, since it is Christmas Eve, might as well show off some nice winter aesthetics for video games. But let's get started into the news. This is just a follow-up from last week. We talked about the day before and it being a gigantic scam. Well, Steam is actually taking unprecedented events here, unprecedented action. Dear community, we regret to inform you that the development company Fantastic has officially ceased operations, and as a result, the day before will now be retired and service will be turned off January 22nd, 2004. So this came out like early December. Like 6 days later, the company announced that it was bankrupt and it was no longer existing. They shut down. It was this bad. That's how bad their release was. A lot of people said it was just a scam in the making, that it was never going to be completed. And it kind of says, kind of proves them right on the fact that you literally announced that you're bankrupt 6 days after you release. There's definitely something wrong there. As previously communicated, Mytona, that is the publisher, as the investor, has been working to collaborate with Steam to facilitate refunds for all game purchasers. For any player that has not received their purchase refunded, Steam will now proactively refund all remaining players. So this is actually really crazy because never before has Steam literally just said, here's your money back. Like, you can request a refund, and that was originally what was going to be happening, is that, you know, you could contact Mytona or somebody and get a refund, but Steam is literally doing it for you now. That's how bad. Like this is amazing. The 22nd, the game was crap, but literally almost a little over a month after this game's released, it's going to completely shut down its servers. We extend our gratitude to the community support throughout the project's life. Fortunately, without a development team, we have no alternative choice but to close the project. Amazing. Yeah, it looked great at first, but apparently all that was just fake trailers that didn't turn out. Fake trailers, empty promises. And this is another piece of follow-up from last news. We talked about artistic nudity. Well, apparently during that time, Twitch's art category broke its viewership record while the artistic nudity policy was in place. So, kind of interesting, but I guess it's just goes to show you that there's a reason they're allowing this to still happen. It brings the views. That is definitely for sure. And I will spare you the awful videos I've seen of Boogie trying to take advantage of the artistic nudity meta. That was awful, but funny regardless. But hey, this shows to show you. It brings in the views. So let's move on to some new news. This was kind of interesting. I don't really follow esports that much, but this apparently got 5 million views. M5 World Championship. This is a mobile game. Mobile Legends apparently got an insane amount of views. And actually, I was like, oh man, what are they, botting views? But like, look at this. It's amazing to see this amount. Let me put on my Twitch border here. Let's look at this production value.
Find a solid heavy spin. That could have been the saving grace. That could have allowed for the little bit of damage from Onyx.
I mean, they've got giant, like this,
but that was only one part
giant
of the equation.
things.
It's my birthday today. Thank
Look,
you so
they
much
got
for
people
this
doing
courtesy of
interviews.
RTD.
I don't know if they've got the.
That is definitely 100%.
They got a
But I
huge
think
crowd.
They just want to make sure
This
that
is so. They're playing on phones. This is like a desk setup. They have freaking phones instead of computers. It's so wild to see this. They're literally playing on their phones. I can't. It's just amazing to see this popularity in esports for a phone game. I don't know. Asians have no taste, I guess. Hey, Twitch has become irrelevant and porn is free. No need to funnel market for these girls. I don't know. I guess. Yeah. I mean, I don't follow like any esports things now because I don't play any games that aren't that are have an esports scene. But yeah, when I was like into some games like League of Legends, I would watch the World Championships like when it first started up. Same things with like Splatoon. I'd watch their like esports events, and they're all right. They're not too bad. It's fun to see like when you're playing the game, trying to get better at the game. It's cool to see the people that are playing the game at like the absolute top level. That's interesting. But once I get out of the game, I'm just not interested anymore. Like I don't think they're super entertaining on their own. Outside of being interested in the game itself. It's like, like football, basketball, I'll occasionally watch regardless, but I guess it's more of like a cultural thing, You can actually, talk to other people about it pretty easily. But this was a funny, I wanted to show you this. This was a funny moment. And this is just so indicative of esports right now. Wait, hold on. Can I get you? Oh, darn it. It doesn't have the volume on this. Why didn't it play? Oh, I guess because that's the way I record it. But literally in the middle of this, they had a pause game. Please wait. Like the middle of their grand finals here.
He went in for the Thames.
I think this actually has it right here.
They got the turtle in terms of the goal difference. Not really, because the only one that has a goal advantage on AB Brand is.
Let me see.
Now the turtle has been started by AB Brand.
It's so funny to see the crowd reaction.
Heavy spin used up already. Primal Rat going to be going as well now. Oh!
And you hear the crowd's reaction.
Right before a big team fight.
It's just,
ladies and gentlemen, please do be patient with us. We'll try to solve this technical.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Like giant esports, they got this giant production area. Crowd in the middle of like, oh, a game crashed. I mean, there was that Super Bowl where like the lights went out, and that was pretty crazy. But man, like esports, this is another thing that they need to make. They need to get around with esports. Their game just
as fast as possible.
So now we got to talk about the possibility, because I'm looking at draft coming in from.
I can't believe it. Just an error. Like you're in the middle of like a team fight, and then like, especially as a player, like, oh, game crash. Sorry. Be patient with us. Oh, that's embarrassing, man. Esports, but I mean, this got an insane amount of views. Super popular, and a mobile game too. Like mobile gaming is something I look down on because it is not as good as regular games. I mean, I like mobile games. I've played some phone games. They're like fun in terms of like, a good way to kill time. They're simpler. They're kind of made with like so you can play them in very like short increments, which I think has a place in video games. It's just more or less, you just never get to that level of complexity that like a full-on console game will have, with a controller or a mouse. So it is like a simpler game. Let's move on here. M5 crashing in the middle of their championship with 5 million views. There's another esports. Let's talk about esports here. Continue. Can I expand this? Yes. Here we go. This is Faker, one of the biggest esports players of all time.
Are the Calming Corp fans booing?
So we played the Worlds and we are well trained, so we are looking.
As you heard here, there is people booing.
Okay. And lastly,
people booing in the audience. Faker, one of the greatest League of Legends players of all time. And then this caught a reaction. First and foremost, we never wanted booing in a show match. It is important to announce that it's a show match, So it's, kind of for fun. They got stopped really fast by their fans. And then this guy kind of defending his organization. You don't have to lie. And then basically saying that, they got shut down. It's not a big deal. We don't have any beef with the other players, but this guy came out. Jerry Sports fans from around the world. Carmen Corp has never and will never encourage his fan to booze over teams. It happened. I personally told the board of supporters is not what I think is best way to support. And then we hired the booed coach from the other team. We know that we have a new kind of org. We bring new fans, amazing fans. They follow our players everywhere around the world. They shout, they sing, they invest much of their time, energy, and money with us. But we do not own them. They are free. They do not follow orders from the org and will never have to. Sometimes they go too far, and we discuss about it. On this place, they managed it the best way possible by stopping a few of them doing that. You can remember 10 seconds. It happened to the fact that a crowd of like 500 passionate fans. 480 stopped it in 10 seconds. You can hate them, but in 3 years, we never experienced any form of hooliganism. Every competition we participated in glorified our fans for what they brought. Every production is focusing on them each time we received them. Please have a look at all the video teasers they use our fans to hype the tournaments or our live events. So people got upset about this. I mean, look at this. Here's this guy, Fabian Mallet. Faker is the GOAT. He warrants respect. I believe the majority of KC fags and orgs would rush to condemn the action of a few posts. They didn't. I got harassed. Could have shown some class. Chose to show none. Love France, their fans, and passion. Disappointed by KC. Big L. And then, of course, Kamito commenting on that. Boone got stopped by other KC fans. Few of them made a mistake, and we condemn that. I don't even think it's a mistake. It's booing an enemy team. Fine, in my opinion. Are making a big deal for no reason. It saddens me. If you're really feeling bad about some comments, we could have helped in private, but do you really care? That's the question. A lot of this, I always hate this passive aggressive crap. Oh, they could have. I got harassed because that people didn't condemn the actions hard enough. Even though, look, I think this is actually the perfect response right here. Is like, hey, we have fans. We can't control our fans. Now, let me put this other Twitter border back up. Hey, we don't control our fans. They're for free. They're fans. We can't control them. We never will. We don't support what they did because we think it was, kind of like out of line for a show match. Yeah, what are cheers? Exactly. Without booze, what are cheers? You gotta have a little bit of that negative energy, and that's another thing in esports. Oh, quit being negative. Like, come on, it's supposed to be fun. It's like, I guess it's kind of like autistic. They don't really get the idea of like, hey, we're getting angry at the other guy, cheering our guy. It's part of the kind of like fun of the entire thing. But people take it way too seriously, like this guy Fabian Mallet, and I guess he's gonna call them. Oh, they don't have class. They got mad because I made a big deal of it. A Faker, who cares if Faker gets booed? He's one of the most famous esports players in the world. One of the best players in League of Legends probably of all time. So, hey, some people are not going to like him. That just comes with the territory. Let's move on. Oh, yes, this is another. Oh, this got some people mad. This is by Josh. Are so terrified of people sexualizing Tracer that they completely removed her ass. Like it just doesn't exist here. The humanity makes no sense. And let's look at this. This is, I guess, a new skin for Tracer. If you have any questions whether Overwatch is completely circled the drain by now, look at this. I mean, the more you look at it, the less sense it makes, really. Like, if you kind of, like, just look at it from the side, you know, just glance at it, it looks fine. But then, like, really look at it, like, is this the front of her pants? And then, of course, I've got a comparison for you guys right here. Here we have, you know, original Tracer when Overwatch first came out, back when it was good. You got this pose, which they thought was too provocative, so they made it this pose, which is kind of shows it off even more. Then we have this. You know, this is the timeline of Tracer. No, you cannot. You can't sit anything. I mean, water just rolls off of it. It's literally flat, just completely flat. Poor Tracer, man. Really, real shame what they've done to her. It's just, and this is just continuation of the problems in Western video game development as they continue to make their games uglier and uglier for a small, vocal members of the community. Try to avoid conflict. I don't understand like how any self-respecting like game maker or designer actually allows this crap. But maybe that's just the culture of the video game industry right now, where it's like this is celebrated, you know, the right is celebrated and the left is condemned within these kind of crazy, culture surrounding, I don't know, Silicon Valley or wherever these games take place. Now it's time. But that's here nor there. No artistic integrity. Absolutely not. They're afraid. Cowards is what they are. They don't care about their fans. But that was an interesting, just to further document the sort of problems plaguing today. But let's move on, guys. This is where the main crux of the show. This was a IGN interview with the creators. I mean, we talked about them last week, but there was another interview which shared some even crazier, statements by Eiji Omna and Fuyabashi-san. Fuyabashi. But let's see. We're talking about it. I haven't read the entire article. There's a specific quote, but there's some interesting stuff. Like, let's move on down here. Oh, let me show you this. This was actually really cool. They were talking about, so it's been several months since Series of Kingdom released. Can you share your hindsight perspective, anything that would change, given the opportunity or ideas that you've left behind? Like, so I'll start saying this game is built so that players can really use their imagination to create anything. And the kind of freedom and creativity really shows itself on social media, like YouTube, people uploading videos and watching that. Really, the first thing is just surprise. It's beyond even the development team's imagination of what kind of things people created. And then Omina adds, the producer, so in my past, when I was in college, one thing I did was work on creating puppets. And these puppets that functioned by turning a crank of sorts and get them to move. And this was something that when we were working on Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I wasn't able to do. But after the game came out, I saw that and like, oh my gosh, these people created puppets like the ones I made in real life when I was in college. But with more complexity, I wasn't able to do during development. And so I see that and like, oh man, they're kind of one-up me in that regard. And this is from This guy on Twitter. This is crazy. We got cue the Godzilla theme. Morgan Webb. Oh yeah. She's I don't know if they used a mod to get the shot. I kind of feel like they had to. Things on the back. Got the atomic breath too. How crazy is that? Love this shot. That's absolutely amazing what people do with Tears of the Kingdom, the Ultra Hand. The cinematography on it was great too. Do you have any favorite post-release moments from the community? For example, someone created Godzilla and Tears of the Kingdom. It was incredibly. Yeah, I saw the same footage recently, and it shows like this must be a different game. And then I read through it, and it was like, oh, it's a game we made. It was certainly a surprise. I've seen the same video. And in the video leak, it doesn't appear on camera or on the screen, so I was wondering, what did they do with the camera? It almost feels like a different game in that way. I'm still kind of mystified by that. You better watch out. If they find out you used a mod, they'll copyright strike this video. Having finished Tears of the Kingdom recently, I'd love to talk about something about the ending. All right. This is kind of interesting. When did you, spoiler alert, when did you decide that Zelda should become a dragon carrying the Master Sword? So I was trying to recall when that was, but the fact that Zelda was going to turn into a dragon was something that we had decided very early on in the planning stage. And the idea of having the Master Sword on the dragon probably immediately after that. So if you were considering the whole development process like 1 to 10, say the dragon decision was probably somewhere between 1 and 2. And the decision of the Master Sword on the dragon's head was 4, although we did know the Master Sword should probably be on the dragon somewhere. So this story has a great time paradox as a theme and goes through it. And so we were thinking, okay, well, how can we use the Master Sword with it as a theme in the background and get the Master Sword in Link's hands once he no longer has it? Remember that we at some point stumbled on the dragon being a way that could deliver the Master Sword to Link in kind of a grand fashion. And this is the follow-up that I think is kind of interesting. It was stressful. Was it stressful thinking about that players could discover the Master Sword in a lot of different ways? For example, just going to the dragon or seeing the memory first. I used a guide to get there, but the design aspects and storytelling seemed very complicated to me. We built the game, and then this is Fubiashi saying, we built the game so that's an enjoyable experience for players. And we certainly spent a long time discussing with some of the main contributors of the game and really think about how we would build the game such that if someone were to, say, discover the dragon without seeing anything else, that we could perhaps conceal it a little bit, make it a little bit mysterious. There's a lot of hard work in figuring out how to accomplish all this. But this is all tied to the idea that there's a certain sense of accomplishment and joy when you're working hard towards something and you unravel a deep mystery. We want players to be able to enjoy that, be able to enjoy it as well. So in that sense, I would say that certainly a lot of work, it's certainly a lot of hard work, but it wasn't stressful in creating this game. We didn't want to create a game where players can't do something because we don't want them to see it. We wanted to create a game where people can discover it in their own way, and that was the point that we made sure that we didn't do. that was a point that we made sure that we didn't do. This is setting something up a little bit later that we're going to discuss. So I'm in complete agreement. This is a Numa with what Fitchwachi said in the games, where in the past you need to follow specific steps or complete tasks in a very set order, or the kind of games of the past, whereas the current games of today are ones that we can accept a player's own decision and give them freedom to flexibly proceed through the game, and the game will allow for that. So I'm in complete agreement with that as a design philosophy, but as a producer, I do have to admit that making games that way always carries with it additional development cost, and that is something I have to think about. All right, so this is the big quote, the big crux of what we're getting into now. This person asks, it's interesting to hear you say that, because one of the discussions I've seen among Zelda fans is, gosh, I miss the more traditional Zeldas of the past, and I'm wondering, how do you feel about that, given the direction of the series towards a very free-form, open-ended kind of design? Anuma, well, I don't think we as people, and this is where he really gets into trouble. I'd say I just haven't played it, got the game of the year. Well, I do think, Anuma here, I do think we as people have a tendency to do what we want, the thing we don't currently have, and there's a bit of a grass is greener mentality. But I also think that with the freedoms players have in more recent games in the series, there still is a set path. It just happens to be a path that you choose. So I think that this is one thing I kind of like to remind myself about the current games that we're making. But also, it's interesting when I hear people say those things, because I'm wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? I do understand the desire that we have for nostalgia, and so I can understand it from that aspect. This, of course, made people very upset because there's a lot of hardcore Zelda fans that really enjoy the linear Zelda, and to kind of have Anuma dismiss it as nostalgia. They just, want to have nostalgia for the old type of linear Zeldas. All of a sudden, and this is the man that, helped, one of the guys that helped direct Ocarina of Time. He's worked on, several different Zelda games. He's kind of like I said, the producer for Zelda right now. And some people are hoping for a more linear Zelda, but looking at this, seems Anuma is very set on continuing the open style of Zelda games. So I kind of wanted to dig into this, and I'm going to bring in some visuals here. This is Tears.
There we go.
Let's see. I'm going to mute that so I don't have to hear my voice over. But you have Tears of the Kingdom. You have this open world Zelda, and you have this sort of linear Zelda like Ocarina of Time on the 64. That's sort of the sort of set the standard for the new 3D style Zeldas. And of course, you also have the like Super Nintendo top down. That is a linear style Zelda. But is linear just nostalgia? And I don't think so, personally. I mean, Anuma might dismiss it a bit as it, but what is the differences? I mean, first you have this open world design, and this is as you can see here, like on my screen, I'm on the sort of trial island. The path of the open world Zelda is to kind of put you on some sort of island first, where they kind of give you a tutorial about how to play the game. There's usually like 3 or 4 like little like points of interest you have to go to get off of it. Then once you get off, you basically have 4 more points of interest, these temples that you have to go to in order to unlock the sort of final fight with Ganondorf. And you spend most of your time going through these these 4 temples. And basically once you get off this island, the entire map is open to you. You can go wherever you want, you can explore wherever you want. it might nudge you in sort of like a way like, hey, go to like Rudo Village first. That might be a good place to start. But basically, you just have this entire world, and you get to go wherever you want to go. And the downside, I think, to this is they're not really connected in any sort of way. There's no like sense of time moving forward while you move through these like 4 different areas. You know, get these 4 points of interest done. It's only until you complete all of them that the sort of world moves forward with you moving on. Like that they actually acknowledge that you've done these things. You know, you completed these 4, either like divine beasts in Breath of the Wild or the temples in Tears of the Kingdom. So with like a linear path, you'd have, you know, after each temple, you kind of like have this steady progression through the world and, you know, towards the end of the story. And I think that has an advantage over the open world, because I mean, you're probably going to spend, you know, 40 to 50 hours, and like you are progressing in a way, but the world isn't really exactly acknowledging that you're progressing through it, and that's kind of an odd thing when I've been playing these games. And then the other thing that I think linear has over open world is that really with the open world games, when you have just sort of a sandbox where you can do anything, the protagonist itself is kind of acting on the world rather than the world acting on the protagonist, if that makes any sense. Because usually, like narratively, it's not the protagonist that moves the world forward. It's actually the antagonist that does it. And basically, the protagonist kind of responds to the sort of challenges and danger that are presented by the antagonist. And in this case, you know, like Ganon or his like forces, you know, would there be some sort of danger that needs to be taken care of, and some sort of, you know, emergency that you need to respond to. And eventually, you know, they're able to sort of corner that the enemy, and then dispatch them in a sort of final fight. With the open world Zelda, essentially you don't have any of that. There's really no sense of urgency that you need to complete any of these things. You just kind of explore and enjoy the world at your leisure, and eventually you get to the end and you fight. At least with, you know, sort of linear, like, hey, there's these things that you have to do in a certain order, you know, sort of priorities that you have to take care of in terms of like these temples or dungeons. And that would, like I said, that has an advantage. Both of them have advantages. Yeah. Both of them have advantages, but ultimately I think the linear does have an edge on that from like a narrative perspective, because it has a set narrative. The other thing is, like, in terms of like digesting the world, the linear will like sort of, as you progress in the story, will sort of put you in different places, and you slowly explore. I don't know why I'm beating this poor guy. Man, what's wrong with me? As you explore these areas, you kind of introduced to different parts. Like you may start, you know, in the forest, and then you move on to the sort of main city, and then from there, maybe you explore the Rudo Kingdom, and then eventually go to the Gerudos. So you basically digest the world in smaller bits that are kind of easier to take on. With the open world, like the second you get off this island, like you're just there. Like I don't know if I think I just stopped after I descended. Here, let's see. No, don't playback speed. And then, like, boom, this entire world opens up, and then you're just there. And then you decide, oh, where do I go from here? Like, you don't know. So the linear Like if you don't want to commit to this, like completely immersing yourself in this entire world, it can be a bit of a challenge. And I think from this aspect, there's less pressure put on the player to decide where they want to go. They have like an idea of like, hey, here's where you go. And that's, I think the essence of the linear experience is that you have like a set right way to go. And like, here's how we're going to present the narrative and the world to the player. And if it's done well, it can be very enjoyable. I mean, sure, like, yeah, it's great that you can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. And, you know, some players are definitely going to like this better. But at the same time, not everybody is going to want to have to go through all of this just to enjoy the game. And then the last thing, and I think probably the most important thing in terms of difficulty, is, or I should say, the difficulty of the game is probably the thing that open world I think does the worst, because the fact that you just have this open area, there is no order to which you do things. Basically, you have to have kind of like a scaling system to decide the difficulty of the game. Like any of these temples or any of these areas in the world you could go to right away. It doesn't matter. And then the developers have to factor that in. So what Tears of the Kingdom does in their case is that they have this sort of scaling system where as you defeat enemies, you gain XP, and depending on how well you do it, you gain, you know, more XP, and then essentially you sort of level up. All of this is in secret, though. It's like behind the curtain sort of things. And as you level up, the enemies in the world get harder. Like harder enemies will appear. And like, you know, it goes from like blue bokoblins to like black bokoblins, then to like silver bokoblins. They have more HP, they do more damage, they drop better items that you can use to fuse on your like your materials with to get better weapons. I think, you know, Breath of the Wild did something similar to where like they just carry better weapons for you to grab. And then so the entire world sort of scales. And honestly, I do not like that, how that system works, because basically, like, you don't really have this sense of progression like you would in a linear experience, where like you can go back to like the area that you first started at, and then you know, beat the crap out of everything. You don't feel like you're like, man, I've really grown since this area. And then, you know, where like maybe the desert super hard, you know, the forest that you started in super easy, all the enemies just one shot and wreck. So you have the more of an experience of getting stronger, becoming stronger. With the open world, you just don't have that, where it's like everything just gets harder as you go. So you don't have the same sort of that same sort of experience, like everything. And that was actually the problem with like saying things like Diablo 4, which is open world as well, is you never have that sense, especially with, you know, a game that's character driven, like a sort of RPG sort of fantasy. You want to sort of like get the idea that you become stronger. And it's the same with Zelda too. Like as you, though, like especially in these open worlds, you don't really have the treasures that you used to have and the gadgets. So maybe you get some armor, and maybe like you have some better weapons, but it's not like you get like the hook shot or the bows. Well, you do have a bow, but you know, you don't unlock this stuff to give you like different ways to dispatch the enemies. Yeah, the feedback is not that they know if you're doing. Yeah, linear does make the most sense, in my opinion, as far as like playing the game. But I think there is, you know, still stuff to the open worlds, but the difficulty is probably the biggest, I think, annoyance, because if you could at least have like when there's sort of, especially like, you know, maybe as you get closer to the you know, like Ganon's castle, or, you know, like the Hyrule castle, where the final fight is, things get more difficult. As you progress in the game, they get more difficult. Especially this actually is with the dungeons too. Since they only have like these 4 dungeons, these 4 temples, you can do them in any order. So the difficulty that's presented in these just is about all the same. And they're all pretty easy, to be honest. They don't have a lot of difficult challenges in terms of combat. It's mostly puzzle solving. And of course, people don't like the style of dungeons either. I watched a video from like a popular YouTuber called Arlo that really hated the water temple that I'm showing right here. Though, to be honest, I think that for an open world game, this is actually the kind of dungeon they need to do more of. Unfortunately, one of the issues that they've done with like Breath of Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, is that you have so many options to move and so many options to like move vertically or horizontally, to fly, to glide. I don't think you can really make a world or dungeons traditionally where you can have these puzzles. They do this, with the challenges where like you kind of go in and then you're restricted from moving. But hey, Nuke, how's it going? So you go in and you're restricted from moving, but they only last like a few minutes. You have like a dungeon that you could, spend like 1 to 2 hours in, and like you can't, glide or climb walls or use any sort of stuff. It just wouldn't work. So you're kind of forced to create temples like this where you are able to sort of like fly around a really open area and then like just have specific puzzles or challenges in certain areas. They're very open. You're not like going through like rooms the same way you would in a traditional Zelda dungeon. And things like this, like I think, are the future of open world Zelda dungeons. I don't think they've quite gotten it down in terms of like making them as interesting as they could be, but I think this is sort of the start. I mean, that is like one of the things to say about open world Zelda is they've only been doing it for 2 years, so I don't think they've quite gotten like. But even before, like with like Legend of Zelda on the 64, they had all those years of making Zelda games ahead of it, and it was essentially like a Zelda game but in 3D. You still had the stuff that was like in the Super Nintendo style Zeldas, with the temples, with the dungeons, where the sort of I mean, there was like some different 3D puzzles, but a lot of the puzzles had like a similar feel to Legend of Zelda from the past. With these with these sort of dungeons, like the open world, is just completely different in terms of the movement that you can do. So I don't think they've quite figured out just how to make it as interesting as possible. And that's actually probably one of the reasons like guys like Anuma are so psyched on open world Zelda, because it's essentially like a blue ocean to them. Like they haven't done anything like this in like years and years, and to finally have this chance to do this grander style of game where players just have absolute freedom, and you have to sort of design around that absolute freedom, as much as possible, while still kind of like maintaining some sense of narrative that people also play the Legend of Zelda for. It's not like, I mean, like the ultimate sort of open world game I think is like Minecraft in terms of the sandbox, but if you think about Minecraft, it doesn't have a really strong narrative to it. There's like a general story and lore around the Minecraft world, but there's not much because you can't really have it, because players can kind of do whatever they want. They can change the world in any way they want, and you're sort of left trying to like, I mean, there are attempts to create like a dungeon or a dungeon type of experience with ancient cities or strongholds just don't work. You can just easily get around it, create and modify as you want these areas. So you can't really give the player a linear, like any sort of type of linear or narrative experience with it when they can literally just destroy it at will. And that's going to be for these Nintendo game creators, just something that's, I don't know how you get around that and I'm not sure if they've figured that out yet either. Let me check my notes here to try and regain my thoughts. But yeah, that's I mean, like the idea, like I said, Enuma, I don't quite understand why he said that the way he did, but I think a lot of it is just, I think he thinks open world just creates a much bigger challenges in terms of design. It's totally different than the what he's been doing for the past I don't know what 30 years. So I can definitely see why he's like all aboard making these style games as opposed to the old games. But to me it seems like there's nothing out to figure out with these games. I mean, you look at open world, it's super fun, and there's sort of the piece of the puzzle missing in these games. Like, this is not as good as open world Zelda could be, in my opinion. Like, Tears is great, and same with Breath of the Wild. They're awesome games, but I still think they are missing something, and hopefully Nintendo will continue to explore. It's exciting to see what they can do in the future to kind of solve that problem. But let's see, like with traditional dungeons, you can't have traditional dungeons with open world gameplay. I think people clamoring for that traditional dungeons within open world, where like you can just explore the open world, then you go into a dungeon and it's more sort of like the old style dungeons. I don't think that's going to work. I think it's way too jarring to suddenly like just get restricted like that. And like a game like, I don't haven't played Elden Ring, but like looking at Elden Ring's gameplay, you don't have that level of movement and freedom, even with an open world. So it's just not going to work. You can't, limit Link's options here. Like, he's got so many ways to do different things, and all of a sudden you enter a dungeon and he's restricted like that. It just wouldn't work, even from like a narrative's perspective. But what do you guys think? Let me know. Did you think open world Zelda versus linear Zelda? Would you like to see a linear Zelda? I mean, I still would, but I would prefer almost like the Link Between Worlds or Link to the Past, that style of game where it's 2D top down. Those were always, of course, I have fond memories of Link to the Past, one of my favorite Zelda game personally on the SNES. I love those style. Now, not that I don't like Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess, but ultimately, like that's what I would want if they had to make a linear Zelda or decided to kind of develop a second style Zelda. It's like going into a cage. I mean, yeah, that's like what a traditional dungeon is. It's like, it's that sort of challenge. And I can definitely see, why it's restricted in the games. I just think like something like this, like the water temple, like I'm showing on the screen, is just the way like an open world style dungeon would feel. And they've sort of like, they've sort of fit it into the world in a cool way. Same thing with the wind temple. The way they did it, where it's like flying in the sky, and like you go into the sky and on this giant, flying ship, and fight the boss there. The Wind Temple probably like cinematically was easily the best, but the way they did it like this, like the Fire Temple was probably my least favorite, and it's kind of like more of a traditional Zelda. I just end up flying through that with flying machine. Let me see if I can bring that video up. All right, let's see. Video. Zelda. Zelders. Let me see if I can. Oh. Spoiler alert. Here's me in the fire temple. Really, I'm really having fun here. This is how I get around the. This is how I get around the fire temple with my flying machine. And even this is like super open, so like they're like, all right, we want to keep Link's movement options, while still kind of presenting with puzzles and challenges. I don't really think they. Oh, I think one of the things missing is they don't really give you like a lot of good combat challenges in this game, or in the the temples. Like in the down here they'll have like arenas where you can fight Lionels and stuff, which is pretty cool. But they never do it in temples. But again, I think that's because of the difficulty issues, where they have these. Let me turn this off. Where they can't make it harder because they don't know what level you're going to complete this game in. Like they'll have like these guys show up, which they'll might get harder, based on how much XP you have. Their horns, will turn different, and they'll have like harder, better weapons. But no Pacific enemy is going to show up like a Hillock or something like that to challenge you. You have to like kind of go into like one of these arenas and figure it out, on your own, and do it on your own. So that's kind of lacking in that department. Again, I'm just going to use my bike here. Old school PS2 Tomb Raider had some of the best mix of puzzles and fighting. Yeah. And that's kind of the way you can do with sort of a linear style game where you can like, what point they're going to get what power-ups and what, gear. And then you can kind of design the puzzles based off that. What gear you're going to get, what movement options you're going to have. And like as each dungeon goes on, you can make the puzzles more and more complex. With the open world design, you just don't have it. And that's kind of one of the reasons that all these dungeons are lacking. And this is probably people's biggest gripe with the open world design is the difficulty just isn't there. The difficulty and the complexity suffer because of it. There's just not like a real curve to the game in terms of difficulty. But they're still fun. I mean, like I said, this isn't necessarily to trash open world games. It's just to kind of state a defense for the linear style of a game, which, I still enjoy. I still like. I think, especially a talented game developer like, say, Nintendo can still make a linear style game while at the same time, like a Zelda, and make it, fun, entertaining, and sort of like a narratively tight game that the open world right now, like what they're presenting with, an open style Zelda, just cannot compete with. They might do it eventually, but I think at the moment, God, what great gameplay I'm showing you on the screen. But at the moment, they just can't do it. All right, JWB, thanks for sticking around. You have a great Christmas too. Enjoy it. Holidays are here. Hope you enjoy that long weekend. Hope all of you have a nice long weekend. But that's kind of it for what I was presenting. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, let me know what you think about open world versus linear Zelda. Which do you prefer? Which are you hoping in the future that it gets more attention? All right, guys, that's it for the stream. It's a little bit shorter than I normally do, but that's all right. I hope you all, like I said, hope you all enjoy your holiday. You have a wonderful day. Bye.